This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to a Glass Blower's Companion, episode number 18. That's your host, Jason Michael. I'm recording this on Monday, September 14th, 2020, and hope you are doing well. We are experiencing some tropical weather here in Florida as the Atlantic hurricane season is in full force. I believe there's 6 storms out there right now, and so far none are making landfall except for the one out in the Gulf of Mexico that's going to be heading up to Louisiana here pretty shortly. They've been getting pounded this year so far. It's been a very interesting, active hurricane season that we've all been paying attention to. I know being 2020 right now, I mean, shit, I guess anything and everything can go to hell. but really, anything and everything goes. It just seems like, nothing is a surprise this year. For all of our friends and family out in the west coast of the United States that are dealing with the fires, our prayers and thoughts are with y'all. Those who have lost homes and studios and are just dealing with the stress and anxiety and just literally running for your lives out there. We are definitely thinking about y'all and hope you are staying safe. Going to be potentially doing some kind of fundraising of some sort, just not really sure logistically wise. Something I was thinking about the other day on how we can help any of the artists in this community that have lost everything because of the fires. I know in the past years, there have been some artists that have lost studios, not just to the fires from nature, but also from studio fires as well. And I know Glass Vegas has, and I know Glass Vegas has an artist fund, an injured artist fund, and I'd like to try to find some way of organizing and getting together to get a fund together for artists who lose studios in fires. I know it's a lot of artists. Not a lot, a small percentage, but there have been one too many who have lost their studios to actual fires caused from whatever things happened in the studios. So, that being said, today's episode features Madeline Smith. I saw and came across Madeline on Instagram, which you'll hear me talk about on the intro of the show. But she is a very fascinating artist and character to talk to. We had a blast in this conversation, and she's got a very unique story, unique perspective as well. And she is an artist who makes, part of her focus is glass instruments is one of the fun things, but she also has a spiritual and philosophical kind of mindset into the creation of these instruments, which she gets into full detail. But we'll give you a little bit on Madeline's background and her bio here. Madeline earned her MFA in glass at Rochester Institute of Technology and a BFA in glass from Tyler School of Art. She draws upon her musical background to create glass musical instruments which explore physical connection between players. She utilizes hot glass as a performance medium to consider notions of intimacy and compromise. Madeline started working with glass in 2007 as a high school student. At the time, she was a dedicated musician, planning to become a professional violist. But her passion for glass took over, and she decided to devote her life to glass. Madeline's sculptural glasswork has been exhibited in venues throughout the U.S. and featured in New Glass Review 41 and 35. She has instructed glassworking in schools and institutions throughout the East Coast, including Salem Community College, UrbanGlass, the Crefeld School, and Rochester Institute of Technology. So definitely, again, she's a unique guest. It's definitely a lot of first in this conversation that we have in terms of things that she has going on in her career and her life as an artist. Very fascinating, and I hope you guys enjoy this for sure. Also want to make sure you all are staying up to date with all the things going on over at Mountain Glass. I know right now their West Coast facilities are not open because of the fires that are going on, but definitely stay tuned to whatever Mountain Glass has going on, as they are still continuing to do weekly sales. They had a spot last month they had to actually close down due to COVID, and they took every precaution and thing they could potentially to get the warehouse completely cleaned and keep their employees there safe, which I commend them for that. And it's definitely important as a company to stay open and stay afloat right now during these crazy times, which I hope you as a glass artist are doing that as well. There's so many outlets and options right now that you could sell glass to, but not everybody's taking advantage of it. And in my next episode of the Glass of a Wise Guy Minute, I'm going to talk about some different ways that you can go about marketing and selling your work right now during these crazy times of this pandemic that we're all going through. I know a lot of the information I've done and talked about in the Wise Guy Minute episodes were mostly, they were very specific, but they were also more geared to a time when there's not a pandemic going on and things are shut down like they are right now. So I wanted to bring something home that was just more critical to what's going on right now in current circumstances in our society and what we're dealing with. And I know a lot of artists are struggling out there. And again, there's options and outlets and ways that you can go about getting your work out there, and also take advantage of this time to kind of reinvent yourself as an artist, your lines of work, all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into more detail in that episode, which will be coming soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to rock and roll out of here. I hope you are doing well. I still am in the works of getting Wise Guy TV going, which will be coming up on YouTube. The goal is to have my first episode up and loaded on YouTube at the end of the month. And I don't have a schedule right now for that because right now there's not a lot of things going on in the world of glass per se. So the first few episodes will probably be 15-minute episodes. I like to keep the show to about a 20-minute show, which is a lot of content to cover in 20 minutes. As you know, if you watch the news for 30 minutes, there's a lot that happens in 30 minutes. But I have my first episode pretty much worked out, minus a couple details of some current content that I need to include into that. And then I just got to film it and get it up, edited, and post it on YouTube, and you will be the first to know. So I definitely, again, hope you enjoyed this episode with Madeline Smith, and you can find her on social medias at MadHotGlass, and I'll have her links and all her information she talks about in this episode in the show notes for you. And until next time, thanks again for tuning in to this episode of the Glassblower's Companion. Be safe out there. Do all the things you can to keep you and your family and those around you safe. And we'll talk to you next time. Love you so much. Have a wise day. See you. What's going on, Madeline? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be on the show. And I came across your profile via Mountain Glass. I saw they had posted and shared one of your images, and as they've been doing a lot lately, sharing to other artists out there. And I saw this crazy instrument made out of glass, and I was just completely intrigued and checked out your page. And next thing I know, I'm in this wormhole and just sucked into your page of all this really amazing stuff you started working on, even going back further before you were working on the instruments. And I knew I had to contact you immediately, and I was stoked that you got back, because not every artist out there that I've contacted gets back. I'm not sure if every artist out there I've contacted actually checks their Instagram DMs or not.
Yeah.
So, this is
we're not the best at communication,
right? So I definitely want to bring you on the show because I've always been intrigued by instruments. I'm a musician myself. I'm not professional or anything, but I've always played music of some sorts, and I've always banged on my glass rods or tubes or whatever, and even used like my glass tubing for like a didgeridoo, just goofing around. And so I wanted to pick your brain about the instruments, and I know you have like a philosophical meaning also that goes along with some of these pieces that you've created. But before we go there, I want to back up and get started with your humble beginnings. And so if you want to get us started here by telling us your superhero origin story and how you were introduced to the flame.
Awesome. Yeah. So I got started in like 2007 or 2008, and I just happened to go to a high school that had a glassblowing studio in it. So I signed up for an elective for lamp working, and I had no idea what that was. I thought we were going to be making lamps. But turns out we're actually melting glass, and that was really cool. I was really scared of it at first because I was a musician and I didn't want to like burn my fingers. But after a few weeks, I fell in love with it, and I did hot shop too. So, the bug bit me pretty early on, and I was just like, okay, this is my life now.
Yes,
so
that's
my parents let me. Yeah. My parents let me set up a flameworking studio in the garage, like senior year of high school. So that was really awesome. And yeah, like I've been doing it ever since.
That's amazing. So was the hot shop class in high school too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, it's pretty amazing how. I mean, I know colleges are picking this kind of stuff up, but high school, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, I was really lucky. It's not everyone gets to have access to it that early, and sort of that early intervention changed my life because I never thought I would be like a visual artist. That was the last thing on my mind. And like I said, I was a musician. I was on track to be a professional viola player. And then when I fell in love with glass, I was like, okay, well, this is my new passion. It kind of took over that, that obsession space in my heart. But then because of that, I realized, all right, well, I decided to go to art school for college and really like make that like my dedicated path. And I would never have like realized it otherwise unless I just happened to take that class in high school.
Yeah, it's amazing when the one little door you walk through just like changes your entire life like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you find like, like I guess, so kind of to back up too, you're saying you're a musician and didn't want to burn your fingers. What were you doing? Like what kind of music were you playing at the time?
I played violin and viola like all my life since I was a really little kid. And so classical, classical string music. I did a lot of chamber music, which is a small ensemble of classical musicians. So we play like quartets, quintets, that kind of thing. And yeah, that was just like a big part of my life. And I always loved it. I taught myself the trumpet, as a teenager too, because I just think it's such a weird, funky instrument to play. It's so loud and a little bit obnoxious when you're learning to play it.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful feeling. Although the neighbors hated me.
I can imagine. My nephew actually plays the trumpet, and so I understand the obnoxious thing because he was in middle school when he started, and we're hoping that he gets a full ride for college for it because he's picked up. He's made all the state and local and national bands, and it's. I went to a performance like pre-COVID basically that they did a whole set, like the actual conductor walked off the stage, and half the audience, and it was all parents, of the kids on stage, were wondering what the hell was going on because the conductor walked off stage, and they played an entire like the whole song without the conductor there, and it was amazing seeing these high school kids that have been together since their freshman year that were so connected and so well-rounded and practiced that they could just play without having to have a conductor. Like it brought me to tears, like just seeing the power of teamwork and this generation that's coming up in a sense that they're not a bunch of assholes like everybody thinks they are.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that about music. When you're playing in a group, you have to you rehearse together, you practice together, and you build these elements of communicating with one another to like really get to be able to create this collaborative art form. And that's something that just like it gets me. It makes me really happy, and it's one of those things in life that I find really important. And actually, when I discovered like hot shop glassblowing, I saw like a huge parallel between glassblowing and playing music with one another, because like you need an assistant, you need other people there. It's this collaborative art form that requires like a lot of constant communication to be able to create this collaborative piece of art. So that was something that I really loved immediately about glass.
Yeah, completely. I was actually going to say that exact same thing. It's so true. It's like I've always considered it to be like this unchoreographed dance in a sense. Like y'all just kind of, everybody's in tune with each other in a sense, and things have to be just almost perfectly set for something to come out in the end.
Yeah, totally.
With some improvising as well, which happens in music at times.
It's like jazz, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Did you find like the hand skills that you had from playing music and the hand-eye coordination in a sense, like helped you in your glass, like immediately kind of excel yourself?
I actually think probably it did, because there's a sense of being, ambidextrous with playing the viola. You have your left hand that does the string fingering and your right hand that's the bow. And then, with glass blowing or flameworking specifically, it's like you use both hands at once. So I think there was probably an element of cross training.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've always enjoyed talking to glass artists that are also musicians, and I know a lot of, even though I haven't talked to them, but a lot of our community in a sense have some kind of music background or sense, and even if they don't play the music, you can go into most glass studios and there's something music playing in the background, like this rhythmic kind of connection that we all have, to the glass, because glass has a rhythm to it, and you kind of, if you can get your groove going, your shit works a little bit better for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, music is huge, and I think that with music like glass blowing, it requires that same state of flow, or it lets you get in that same aspect of flow and like blissful creation. I feel like in both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to find that in high school is pretty wild. What year were you in when you started that in high school?
I think I was a junior.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So, I know, like in ceramic class in high school, we had 3 rules, and the first 2 rules were you can't make ashtrays and you can't make bongs, and number 3 was you can't make ashtrays, you can't make bongs. Like, it was kind of a funny thing that our teacher told us, and so I was kind of curious with the glass. Was like there were rules set, like you guys can't make pipes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That was kind of a rule that they gave us. I mean, we didn't have tubing in high school. I just don't think they didn't give us access to that. I didn't even know about it for like a year in at least. But yeah, no bongs, no pipes.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
Nice. So what were some of the first things they had you making?
So it was the first flame working I did was soft glass beads. So I learned how to make beads, like a lot of people. And then my second year, I had a teacher, Josh Pohl, and he's more of a hot shop glass blower, but he taught us the networking technique. So, joining rods together to create sculpture. So that was the first time I actually made like a larger piece of glass, that wasn't like a little bead or like a tiny little tchotchke. It was more of like a larger sculpture. And so that was my portfolio piece to get into college.
Heck yeah. It's so funny. My buddy Josh, his last name's Pohl, and he has a glass studio in St. Pete, where I'm from. So I'm just saying
funny.
Putting that out there, like they're not the same person, but it's just interesting that there's 2 Josh Pohls in the glass world.
Yeah, small world, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting with networking. I've always been intrigued by that too, just because, like you're saying, you can build larger figures. Like the last episode, I had Mickelson on talking to him about that, and he's making these life-size to scale female figures. Doing the network technique. It's just it's a great thing to learn.
It really is, and it's an amazing thing to teach beginner students. I do a lot of teaching, and that's always like the first or second technique I teach them, because I don't want my students to just make little beads or little things. Like that's fine if that's what they want to do, and in smaller workshops it is. But when I teach like college classes, networking is just so awesome, because you just get your hot seals, your cold seals, your basic construction down, and you can really make like anything. And I always show my students like Mickelson's work, or a bunch of artists that I like. I'm like, yeah, like flameworking doesn't have to be small. It can be like literally you can fill the whole room with networking.
Yeah, totally. Like Insu Choi, is that her name? That does some of the networking stuff. Like her architectural work is just like the staircases and shit. It's just, I remember seeing it in person one time, and it was like just a staircase that was suspended in the air in the gallery space. And it was just, I looked at this thing, I'm like, oh my God, like, and I had been maybe 5 years into blowing glass too, so I was still a rookie. But even now I see that kind of stuff, and I'm still just completely just blown away by how the hell where'd they even start this thing at?
Right. I mean, you have to have the space to do it. That's the big challenge, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's so much fun. Yeah, so high school, so you're doing glass, you're doing music. Sound like you had a pretty fun high school time.
Yeah, definitely. It was fun.
And then that led you to then continuing the glass education at in college then.
Yeah. So I started off self-taught with flameworking, except for like some introduction in high school. And then I went to college. I started off at CIA, Cleveland Institute of Art, and I studied there for a couple of years under Brent Key Young, who also does amazing networking. I think Robert Mickelson he did mention his work, so he does like some really great network sculptures. And then I transferred to Tyler School of Art in Philly, because that's where I'm from originally, Philadelphia. And so I kind of like went the academic route. So I got a sense of how to I learned about glass in different aspects in college, and I also got a sense of how flameworking is kind of regarded in art school. In the colleges I went to, often there's just a torch in the corner, and the lone flame worker, flame
Yeah.
works by themselves.
Yep.
But I was lucky. I got to take a lot of classes independently. So I took a ton of classes at Pittsburgh Glass Center, at Corning Museum of Glass, and I studied with so many amazing flame workers, and they really helped cement my education. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because probably 95% of the glass community is self-taught or apprenticed and has no formal education, maybe finished high school, kind of thing. So it's always interesting talking to artists that have an actual degree in fine arts, or really that's dedicated into glass itself. It's a whole nother level because, like, I know myself, 21 years doing this behind the torch. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much stuff that I do not know because I just don't know. I don't know. I don't really know it until it comes up, and it's like, well, shit.
Right.
I wish I knew that. Like having a hand torch and a frickin' blowhose. I talked to a lot of pipe makers out there that we wish we had these things 10, 15 years ago. They've been around. They've been at our disposal to add to our tool bag, but we never really looked at it as like a thing. I was always really minimal with my tool use, and then getting around artists whenever at Disney where I work, and they have a tool bag full of tools, and all these different things and impression tools and whatever for sculpture, and I kind of had to, I guess, put my ego to the side in a sense, or whatever you want to call it, to open up my mind because I'm very teachable, but I'm also very stubborn in my ways at times, and so I guess I guess too, like, I don't know, in a sense I've always felt art school is a good thing for, I guess, for art itself, but I've always kind of felt like a lot of times the art schools that I've gone to, that the art teacher wants you to do something specifically their way, their technique. So you're kind of learning this teacher's way in a sense instead of learning your way. Does that make sense? Like you're influenced by them more than you're influenced by yourself, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that can be like a problem with art school, and I feel like it's different for every school, but that is like a trap I think people can fall into. It's like wanting to do something the teacher's way, or the teacher like insisting you do it their way, or else for me, like I struggled with an issue of like doing what I thought people wanted to see, like, either to get a good grade or to get like the approval. This is like more like undergrad and stuff, when I was like less sure of myself, but
right.
It can definitely be a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely. Because I know, like, when I teach my students, I have a very specific regimen that I have them go through, and I tell them from day one, like, this is a teacher apprentice kind of situation. Even though you're a student, I'm still looking at you as an apprentice, like the old school ways, and I want you to do stuff specifically this way because I'm trying to teach good habits early on, like fundamental good, habits and practice. And then once I feel that they're at a certain point, then they'll ask me questions about, okay, what would you do? And I'm like, well, what would you do? And I think at that point, when you kind of let the reins down a little bit and start giving them the chance to see from their perspective as well, it really helps and the students grow instead of being like, you must do it this way every single time.
Right, definitely. Like, there's so many different ways to do things in glass. And I mean, like, I agree. Like, when I start teaching, I'm like, do it my way. Like, I'll teach you, like, if you don't have hot seals, like, you're going to regret it. Like, there are certain things where your piece will just, like, fall apart if you don't do it correctly. But then, like, once they get the hang of it, like, sort of opening it up and being like, how would you do it? Yeah, exactly. Like, and it gets them to think more critically and creatively. Yeah,
exactly. And for me, being a teacher, that's what I find I enjoy the most is watching the new student little light bulb come on, and all of a sudden they're on this direction that it's just, you can see the excitement and joy that they're having. You can also see those that are not enjoying themselves, and you're like, do you think you really should be doing this as a student? Find another hobby.
Right. I mean, and seeing the light bulb go off, like, that is just so like wonderful for me. Even like 10 years or so into teaching, like, it just makes me so happy. Like, it kind of keeps it fresh, and I can like relive that first being bitten by the bug moment vicariously through them. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. For me, it's like having a puppy around for the old dog. It's kind of keep the old dog enthusiastic.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very apt metaphor.
Yeah. So, I guess in college, you're taking these classes. What kind of stuff? Because you mentioned hot shop too. Did you get into the hot shop at all in college as well, or were you doing strictly trying to focus on flame working?
Yeah, I definitely did both, especially in the beginning of college. I love the hot shop. Like, it's like obviously a very different feeling,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more physical, more teamwork based, which I love. So I did both. And then this was about 2009. I actually developed this condition sort of over like 1 month period where like all of a sudden, for some reason, it hurt me a lot to stand and walk. And so like the use of my legs and feet became really limited. And there was no answer as to why. I went to like every doctor I could possibly think of. And they're like, well, we don't really know. So kind of this mysterious condition came on. And so I was like really distraught for a while because I was like, oh, like classroom's my identity now. Like I really just want to get in the hot shop and work, and all of a sudden I can't. And it was really difficult. But then I kind of, over a little while, I was like, okay, like this is going to give me the chance to really embrace flame working, because flame working is a lot more accessible. People with different levels of ability physically are able to do it more. So that was sort of the moment where I decided to really like grab on to flame working and make it the thing I was going to focus on and make it my passion.
Oh, have you since had any kind of diagnosis?
For a long time, like there was nothing. And then a couple of years ago, I started going to actually a really good physical therapist, and it seems like it might have something to do with a disc problem. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing PT and, working on it, but it's always been kind of an issue for me. So like I do stuff in the hot shop when I can, and I use a wheelchair in the hot shop sometimes, but the thing that it's really taught me is to like embrace collaboration with other people, and to really like the importance of connecting with other people and giving, as well as being able to accept help from people.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because I know like the hot shop experience I've had, like I had a sciatic issue for a while, just from overworking, mm-hmm. overexhausting, bad body mechanics, that kind of thing. And it's not that it's dangerous, but it definitely has its kind of negative things that you can deal with as a full-time artist, working in a hot shop. I always recommend any flame worker take a hot shop class and do hot shop work, just because of the skills that you learn. And I think mm-hmm. it also gives you that much more of an appreciation for not having to deal with that much heat on your torch.
Yeah, you really appreciate that. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I'm sorry to hear, but I'm glad you've it was I guess a motivational factor for you to kind of look within and kind of move forward from that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like at this point, I've accepted it as part of my identity, and it's really given me a chance to clarify my life and really only focus on what are my goals, what's important to me. All the little things like become a lot less important. So yeah, it sort of has a clarifying aspect, and it also I realize that it informs a lot of my work. So a lot of like the collaborative aspect of it. At this point, I'm just like, well, it is what it is, and then try to make the best of it. And so I'm like a really happy person.
Yeah, it sounds like it, which I enjoy. That's awesome. Yeah, so at that point in time, so then you go to the flame and you realize, full-time flame worker in a sense. What were you trying to start focusing on at that point? Like, what were you starting to make?
So that was at CIA still, and I began making more sculptures, wall pieces, started dabbling in my first instruments. I made a lot of like whistles, like little pieces like that. And then I transferred to Tyler School of Art, and that was really great because I had a lot of amazing mentorship there. There were some amazing female glass artists, and it was really the first time that I was around female glass artists, and that actually like really like inspired me so much, because it just so happened like in high school and my first undergrad, it was just like, it was like male dominated, and just having like seeing someone who was a woman like me, and like seeing her be a badass in the hot shop or flame shop, like it just opened up so many possibilities to me. So like Amber Cohen was there at Tyler. She's a big inspiration. Jess Julius is one of my professors. So they taught me a lot. So it was amazing. And at Tyler, I started doing a lot of like installation work with flame working, and I started getting more into performance with my artwork.
Nice. What kind of performance were you doing? Was it the music side of things, or like actual performance on stage?
Yeah, I started doing some more like musical performance and blending it. But I didn't really quite know what I was doing at that point. But like that's when I started making a little bit more like glass musical instruments and drawing on my background as a musician. I have synesthesia, so when I hear words or listen to music, it's all translated into color. So yeah, for my end of college show, my BFA show, I did an installation that I was sort of translating music from a viola sonata into glass. So it was like hanging glass pieces that represented sort of like what I see with the music.
God, that's amazing. I've read and researched and listened to other shows and about this condition, and it's always been so fascinating to me that there was a guy I heard an interview with that's actually blind. I think he's like 98% blind, and he was talking about that. But the fact that he's blind and has these visuals with the synesthesia, but he's got something else on top of that. That any audio form has like a visual for him, and he started painting and was able to translate the paint even though he's blind. I don't know how he was able to work it out. I had someone there helping him with his colors, whatever. So were you able to like put up on a wall like a composition in a sense through color?
Yeah. I mean, it could be translated a lot of ways, but the way I did it, like it was like an installation with hanging glass, but I also I got the sheet music to a piece of the viola sonata that I played, and I literally colored in the different notes, sort of the way that I would see them. But it was funny, like I didn't realize until I was like in high school, I was like a younger teenager, that like it's not something that everyone had. I just, that's I think a thing that's common for a lot of people with synesthesia. Like they're like, wait. Like once you start talking to someone, it's like, oh, like I saw like a pair of shoes that like looked exactly like the color of your name yesterday. And I said that to a friend, and she was like,
"What? Are you a mutant or something?"
Right. It was a little funny.
Yeah, because like in my head, I'm like visualizing like a Simon game, that's like lighting up to the different sounds that you've composed on a wall. Somehow to do an installation like that would be wild and fascinating.
Yeah. It's hard because you can never really translate it. Like, really, it's all just an interpretation. But
right.
It's a really interesting thing to talk about. And my sisters growing up, they also had synesthesia. So, like, when we were children, we would, like, argue over, like, what color each letter of the alphabet was. And, like, heated arguments. Like, A is red. No, A is black. It makes me so angry to hear that A is not red when other people say that. Like, it's like saying the sky is orange. Like, obviously red. But yeah.
That's so crazy. Well, my wife is colorblind, and her favorite color is purple, and one of the colors that she can't really see well is purple. But it's her favorite color, and I've always given her shit about it because she's like, "Is that purple?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's actually blue." Yeah, it's
so funny.
Yeah, the brain is so weird. It's just man, it's so fascinating.
It's so weird. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't understand it. So from that point, did you I guess that you were focusing more on your music side of things with the glass?
A little bit. I mean, with glass, like when I started doing it, like in college and stuff like that, I stopped playing music full time because, I just ran out of time. Like there's only so many hours in the day, obviously. So I was like, okay, glass is like, and it filled a very similar state in my brain, that state of just like concentration, focused work.
Which is exhausting.
It feels very similar. Yeah, it feels very similar for me being on the torch. It's very much like playing the violin.
Yeah.
It's still an instrument that you're working with your hands temporally. So I didn't play as much like I played like I'll jam with friends, on the weekends or something. But I've always wanted to try to find a way to bridge my passion for music into glass. So that's something that I've been working on for a long time, and that is something I did a lot in undergrad.
You still there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was just you pausing, just making sure I lose you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I myself being a musician too, and I've always had my guitar in the studio or something like that, and it would just sit there and just collect dust because I always felt like all my creative energy would go to my glass, and it was kind of frustrating for me because I even like drawing and stuff. Like if I draw anything anymore, it's going to be something that I'm going to be creating in glass. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
it's a weird catch-22. It's something that like through this whole COVID downtime that we've had, like with the Mouse House being closed for 3 months, I had a chance to kind of take a break and hit pause and hit a reset in a sense. And so I started drawing again. And there's an artist I follow on Instagram, J Ariyama, and he's a Disney inspired artist. He's actually has a lot of Disney artwork that he does, but he did this in the home studio, whatever art of the day. He would post a picture, and then you could use his hashtag and post your stuff. So it influenced me to want to start drawing again, which I did. And then I took about 2 weeks off the torch, but once I got back on the torch again, full time, the drawing went away. You know, it's just unless I'm making.
Yeah,
something.
it's hard to balance it, right? I mean, I feel like I like to find things that I can do to like sort of nourish myself, like in a supplemental way, when I'm not in the studio or when I can't. And like obviously with COVID, like I was shut out of the studio for like 5 months. Like that was the longest I've ever gone without flame working, and it was crazy. It was so hard.
Yeah, bad withdrawals.
So, totally. So like drawing a little bit, playing music again, just finding a way to like keep that creativity going. It's been so important.
Yeah, definitely. I went out and did yard work and played in my garden. That's what I had to do.
Nice. Oh, that sounds very productive too.
Yeah, it was definitely my my little zen place, which I didn't have for so long, and then now I've got it again, which is nice. So I can go back out there and pick my vegetables or pull weeds or whatever, you know. My therapy. Since now, you know, I mean, glass for us is a job, but it's also, you know, an expressive outlet and creative place that we like to go have fun and not feel like we're doing it because we have to.
Right, and it's difficult sometimes to find the balance between, you know, doing stuff to make money and then also doing stuff to actually like feel like you're expressing yourself creatively and allow yourself to grow. So that's like something that, you know, it's always a challenge for me, and I feel like, I mean, everyone has to deal with it as an artist and maker.
Did that hinder you at all from like really moving forward with the instrumentation and the making of those things and fine tuning them?
Yeah, for a while. So when I was out of school, I finished undergrad in 2014, and then, you know, for around maybe 2 or 3 years, I was just a working artist. So I had my own studio. I made work to sell, so mostly like pendants. I have a few different lines of wearable pieces, and then also some sculptures. Around that time, my main body of work was a series that I call arthropods, and they're glass sculptures that look sort of they're like very insect-like, a lot of legs, very sort of otherworldly, and I think of them as like fossils from the future. So I have a whole backstory from them. But you know, it was good. Like they get into, you know, shows and they'd sell every once in a while. But during those years, I just kind of struggled with just being on the grind and making and trying to stay like creative and excited at the same time. You know, like I'm always going to be excited to get in the studio and work, but like I kind of like hit a wall for a little while. And you know, tried to figure out ways to get excited again. So the instrument making, I think I really started focusing on that a lot more like 2012 or so. I took a class with Chris McElroy, two-stroke at TGC, and I think he was one of the ones who first showed me like some techniques for bending tubing really well and like working with sound. So I sort of dabbled with those a bunch, and I was just delighted when I found like, you know, the whole didgeridoo thing, you blow into a tube and it really, the glass is so resonant. It sounds really amazing.
Yeah, totally. Like, I know there was a guy I saw down in the Keys years ago, like 20 years ago, before I was even blowing glass, that was making glass wind chimes. And there was something in his process that he was doing where he was able to tune them somehow. I've just been so long, I don't know what it was, but I don't know if it was a thickness of the wall he was using, but it was
right.
But they were definitely tuned. Like they were, you know, I've seen metal ones that were like in the key of C, you know, kind of thing. And these were the same way, because I've made my own chimes and they just sound like I'm like I'm wearing like a skirt with little bells on it or something like that. You know, it's like it doesn't really have any kind of pretty sound to it. And I was always trying to replicate it, and I don't know if it was just I think it was the diameter and the thickness of the wall. Because like you're saying, like with the didgeridoo thing, you know, if I have like some 38 medium wall, it's going to sound way better than like a heavy wall. It's going to, just because of that vibration that
Oh,
you get.
totally. Yeah, thickness of wall is huge. The thinner wall, standard wall sounds way better. Also, I find like length is also the other really big determinant.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer, for like a didgeridoo or trumpet, the longer tubing you have, the more overtones you can create. So when I make longer trumpets, I'll make them like at least 10 feet long.
Wow.
Tubing curled up. The piece itself isn't 10 feet.
Right.
It's more like several feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
like
seen them.
10 feet of standard wall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also, length is big for things like that you're hitting, diameter, thickness, and length. So I've made some percussion stuff, and you can tune them by like just, taking it on the diamond saw, trimming it down, getting different notes. Also, like where you hold. Like if you're holding the tube or if it's hanging, you have to find the nodes, like the place on the tube where it doesn't vibrate, and like drill the holes in there, and that should be the place where it's making a point of contact. So fun.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I'm visualizing this as you're talking about it because I totally understand what you're saying. Hopefully, those listening also understand. But if you don't, take this piece of tubing and you can tap on it with a piece of graphite or something like that rod, and you can feel the resonance, and you can feel where if you put your hand on a certain place on the tubing, it causes that to stop.
Yeah, for sure. And if you have quartz, that is like the best sounding glass. It sounds amazing. So I have like some quartz tubes I just hold on to, and something about the the composition of it vibrates so like it's so gorgeous, and the overtones are incredible. So
yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if it's got something to do with like the crystalline structure of the glass itself, or if it's just such a harder substance in a sense than glass is, like regular like borosilicate.
Yeah, I think it's the crystalline. I mean, because like there's like quartz singing bowls that they'll make that are like cast quartz, and they sound really amazing. So yeah, it's really fun. Really fun stuff.
So how many sections of tubing did you fuck up before you actually figured out how to get like a nice curl and a bend that was all even walled?
Oh my gosh. A million, definitely. I mean, I started like teaching myself tubing. That was before I took a lot of classes, and I wasted a whole box, probably like 25 millimeter standard wall or medium wall, and it's just like it's a pile of disasters in front of me on the bench. It was really frustrating at first, but just like practice, a lot of fucked up pieces, and even now, like I have to like get the exact right flame if I'm working with like standard wall, like that really fluffy, almost annealing flame, to be able to bend it.
Yeah, it's interesting too because you don't really have like a scientific glass background, and one would think that you did based on seeing what you're doing. Because like you have this one that you have that's got 3 mouthpieces on it, and it's just got one flared end. It is just I'm looking at this thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking for your weld contacts and stuff, and it's like it's all seamless. It's beautiful what you're doing. It's fantastic stuff.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That is that took a while, and yeah, I didn't have a scientific background. I took several classes with people who taught me how hollow working, like Roger Permore, Tim Dreyer, Dennis Brining, who taught at Salem Community College, and out of undergrad, like 2015 to 2017, I taught at Salem. So I taught their artistic flameworking class, which was amazing. I love Salem so much, such a great school. But I love like sort of overlapping with scientific glass blowers, picking up a few techniques here and there. The amount of tolerance that they need, to be able to create something like how exact it needs to be it's really amazing. So I think I borrow a lot of aspects of scientific glass blowing in my work. And I like also borrowing the visual language of scientific glass, like these trumpets. In some elements, they'll represent like some sort of laboratory class apparatus, perhaps. But at the same time, they're super absurd, ridiculous looking instruments. So sort of this like seriousness of the scientific apparatus melded with the absurdity of a glass trumpet, which is already a really ridiculous, like looking form. And then when I start like making it for multiple people, that's a whole other element of absurdity and discomfort, that I love. So it's just really, I love blending those aspects of seriousness and humor.
And it's art. There's no craft at all in this. What you're doing, it's like, to me, it's specifically screams art, because you're taking, like you're saying, it's like this Seussical, scientifically
Hmm.
merged, just funky, weird. And then you're saying, just the fact that it's a glass trumpet to begin with is just absurd.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
amazing. It's awesome.
The glass trumpets, they are, they're really funny. So like I said, the trumpet, it's, I think the trumpet, I think glass is really, or brass, excuse me, is really humorous, because there's not really a way, I think, to play it like gracefully. You're like things up against your mouth, you're spitting into it to make this noise. And for a glass trumpet, there's nowhere to hide, I like to say, because I make them clear, and then after you play it for a while, your condensation of your breath gets on the inside. There's this like very relevant trace of your interaction.
Yeah,
with the
there's no
object.
spit valve.
Yep, nope, not at all.
Not meant for COVID times, for sure.
Definitely not. And COVID is like definitely changed some of the elements of this work. But
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, no, the glass trumpets. Like when I started making them, I never was concerned with replicating the form of the instrument itself. I was always like, what's the weirdest shape I can create? What's something that just looks like humorous, Seussical, like you said, just like really funny, so it can be kind of, I don't want to make work, I try not to make work that takes itself too seriously. Like I want it to be serious, but I don't want it to be like not humorous at the same time. Like I think I'm talking about, so in some aspects of my work, talking about like serious things that are important to me, like connection, vulnerability and stuff like that. But at the same time, like I don't want to be too self-serious. I want it to be kind of like a joke that everyone's in on.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, and the fact that you have all these different kind of philosophical meanings inside of it, it could be interpreted all these different ways by anybody, really.
Yeah. That was, I kind of liked that, like to think of it that way. So at first with the glass instruments, I was just delighted that I could figure out how to make noise out of glass and how to make music. And I did performances, collaborations with other musicians. So it was. And then I went to grad school. I started grad school 2 years ago, Rochester Institute of Technology. And the great thing about grad school is that like it gave me the time to think about my work in a new way. I didn't have to consider making money with my work, and like before that everything was like, okay, I have to make it worth my time. This piece has to, like, I have to be able to get money out of this piece, and that that inhibited me for a while. So being able to take the 2 years in grad school and not have to think about that and just explore with my work was hugely important for me. And I was really lucky to get a scholarship, so I didn't have to worry about loans or anything like that.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was so lucky, and just being able to like take the time and explore and not worry about making money. Like I would never have made this work, and the performance and video work I made, it would never have happened otherwise. But in grad school, I got to start thinking about my instruments in a more conceptual way, a way that relates to my interests. So that's when I started the multi-person trumpet, and that was the one you mentioned, the trumpet for 4 people. So it's like a glass trumpet with 4 mouthpieces, and that was inspired by my interest in the thought of like dependency and collaboration. So, like for me, a lot of my collaboration is dealt with the fact that like I need help and I love connection. Just like if I want to lift a heavy piece of metal, I have to, ask someone.
Mm-hmm.
And at first that took me so long to be able to accept. And once I did it, like it was like a revelation. I was like, okay, like I can help other people, they can help me. But with this question of like, when I add these other mouthpieces to this trumpet, I can no longer play it by myself. I require 3 other people to at least put their mouths on the end of the mouthpiece so that like they can at least cap it to allow me to create a noise. So it's sort of a question of like how uncomfortable, how much will people be willing to give up in order to sustain this collective experience?
Yeah, because it's a vulnerable thing that you're putting people in the middle of, and this intimacy as well. It's I love it. I think it's pretty fucking amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very awkward, intimate experience, and I love that. I love awkward, intimate moments. So if you haven't seen the piece, it requires four people to stand very close to one another. Two people are making awkward eye contact. They're like facing one another. One person has to crouch, so if they're a little tall, it puts them in they have to stoop over, puts them in more of like a physically compromised situation. And if, everyone has different personal bubbles, right? Like mine used to be before COVID, used to be pretty small. Like I love hugging people. I love, you just being close to people. And some people aren't like that.
Right.
So that was kind of the question I wanted to ask is like, how close is too close for people? And like, how can I gauge that? So I wanted to like create this awkward moment that was like very, very close and potentially uncomfortable depending on who you are.
Yeah, and that's something that people need to be put in those positions, I think, in life in general. So many people are afraid to be vulnerable but be put into an intimate position. I mean, sex is one thing, but outside of the bedroom where other people are going to witness what's going on, unless of course you're screwing online or something like that for people to watch you. That's a whole other topic for another day, but it's still it's an intimate thing that you're potentially out in public doing this. Not to mention that you said earlier that these things are clear, so there's nothing to hide behind. It's like
right.
it's like the whole idea of like the photographer that goes out to photograph a war, and their safety blanket and the way they hide from the disgust of what's happening in front of their camera is their cameras protects them until they actually get out from in front of it. So it's definitely something that we all need to be put in that position of. And like especially right now, like you're saying, it sucks that because I'm a hugger. I'm a very tactile, touchy person, and it's been very difficult for me these last 6 months because of it.
Oh yeah, I feel you. Same way. Yeah, it's definitely changed, and it's funny. I made these right before COVID kind of hit the U.S., so they were very timely in a strange way. But yeah, no, I agree. Like I think getting out of your comfort zone in different ways is really important, and like maybe making people uncomfortable. It's a great way to like grow closer to other people, or at least figure out what your limits are.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. It definitely does push limits probably for the majority of people out there.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the four-person trumpet is like it relies on like there's collaboration and there's trust. So like if everyone's playing it at once, if you're not blowing but other people are blowing into it, like their breath's gonna get in your mouth.
Yeah, that's the first thing I was thinking.
And I love that. I think it's like I tried it with a few friends, and like it was a big ask, and I had to ask them a few times because like again, I really need other people to test these out. I'm giving up my autonomy. I can't test it myself. So I'm like, hey guys, like, would you have a few minutes to like put your mouth on this and like blow into it with me? And fortunately, like I have some friends in grad school who would be like, we get weird together. We'll help each other with weird projects. So like they'd be willing to do that. But there are some people who like I wouldn't want to do this with because it's just like it can be really uncomfortable, and it's sort of like it's collaborative, but it's also a battle. Like, if you're not blowing, like you're gonna be losing. Their breath's going in your mouth.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah,
I know that it's like when you share a hookah with somebody, like a 4-person hookah, and one person's, and I don't smoke hookah, but just from what I have in the past, and there's always like one person in the group that's like got the stronger suction in a sense than everybody else. But this is opposite. This is you're blowing out, And another question I was wanting to ask too, if I forget, with that particular trumpet, is there one specific mouthpiece that is like the band leader's mouthpiece in a sense?
Yeah, the one that in the picture, if you've seen it, the one that I'm playing, so it's sort of the furthest away from the bell end of the trumpet, and that one is located so that it has like the longest section of tubing until it reaches the end. So that has the most range of notes. So the mouthpieces that are located further down the trumpet, because of the length between there and the end, they just have a much shorter range, just by the way, like it's physically designed. So the band leader gets the most notes. Yeah.
So there's a little sound of the trumpet, and you guys can hear. It's I'll definitely make sure that this image is up on Instagram so you can see it, and it's just so much fun. And I don't know personally, and there's so many other artists out there, but have you seen anybody else that has done this within glass?
Yeah. So my first inspiration to make glass instruments was Sally Prash. Like she is. If you don't know her, she's an amazing scientific glass blower and artistic flameworker as well. So she's made glass trumpets before, and some other instruments. So she was always an inspiration of mine. I went to the GAS conference in Norfolk, I think it was 2017, and she did a talk called The Sound of Silica or something like that. It's on YouTube if you want to check it out. Okay. It's really awesome. But she demonstrates some of her instruments, how to make a glass bell, panpipes, stuff like that. So she was the person who I saw like way back as a glass baby, and I was like, oh my god, she's so cool. Like I realized that it was possible. So I learned a lot from her, and then I took her class actually at PGC last summer. And I had already been making instruments, like a bunch of different instruments by then, but she showed me like some really sweet techniques for making the mouthpieces. She showed me how to make glass rain sticks, which are really fun. They're challenging. You have to make like a jacketed flask. There's like ridges on the inside, but yeah, I learned a lot of awesome stuff from her just about like how glass and sound work together.
That's amazing. I have got to get out of my bubble. Yeah, the GAS conference is something I've always wanted to get a chance to go to, and of course, like not this year, but last year, 2019, it was over in St. Pete, which is my hometown. And I wanted to go so bad, and just we had scheduling conflicts at work. Like we all were like racing to ask off. We have 8 of us artists there, and there was just I didn't ask off in time, so I ended up having to watch it from afar. But yeah,
it's really awesome, like to get to meet people and like connect. It's difficult because it's so expensive. Mm-hmm. And I went as a student, and then it's a lot cheaper for students, and then I actually happened to have a job that they sent me there. So that was really lucky. That was for Norfolk. So like it was like research for my work, but no, it's a difficult thing. But if it is like happening somewhere near you, like at the very least, like go to the parties afterwards and meet people.
Yeah, exactly. That was one reason I started doing this podcast. Is like I have all these artists out there who I wanted to meet and get to know, and this was one way that I've been able to do it.
It's so great. I love like how small the glass community is. And like just, like hearing different conversations, exchanging tips with people, crossing paths different times, and like podcast interviewing, like that's so awesome because like you really get to know people.
Yeah, absolutely. Hence why I wanted to have you on here. This is fascinating stuff. So do you see like any kind of, I mean, in your future, who knows what the hell's going to happen in the future, but as a artist and wanting to obviously continue this movement for yourself, like do you have any kind of direction that you're going in? Like is the glass kind of taking you in a certain way, or are you trying to push the glass in a certain direction?
There's a lot of directions I go in. I think I'm going to still go in. So like over the past few years in school, I've made so many different bodies of work. Like I have made the instruments. I've been doing a lot more with performance and glass. Because with flameworking, I'm always questioning like, what is contemporary flameworking? Like, and what can it be? And I'm kind of inspired as much by what I'm seeing as by what I don't see. And like, if there's a void that I'm sensing, like I want to go try to fill it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So I actually started doing a lot more performances with glass, and I did a series of video pieces that were documentations of performances, and I call them the Connected Breath series, and it's actually a very similar theme to the instruments, and these videos. It's people who are literally like blowing glass bubbles together. So I'm sort of wondering like, what is a way to like literally and figuratively connect with someone? So we're seeing people join together with their breaths, and the glass bubbles, the bubbles expand and contract and chart the interaction of people's breaths. So there's a level of spontaneity because every time it's different. Like if someone's bubble's a little colder, it will freeze first and then maybe be heated up by another person's bubble. There's also a huge level of trust because like I would only do this with people I really trust. Like you're literally opening yourself up to another person blowing glass in your face.
Yeah.
And like, just like music, I feel like practicing enough and having enough communicating with enough subtlety of gesture to be able to like know when exactly to stop blowing. I think that's really beautiful, and it's another sense of like becoming very uncomfortable and intimate and opening yourself up. So for that video series, I'm really like wondering like what are ways flameworking? It doesn't need to be about the end product, but like the action, the process can be the artwork. The end product can be secondary. So that's sort of like another thing I'm thinking about flameworking is how can it be a performative kind of art form?
Yeah, totally. So with me doing my demonstrations over at the Mouse House, that was something I had to figure out myself. And I'm a bit of a ham. I've always enjoyed being on stage as long as I'm comfortable. Because guests ask me all the time, like, "Aren't you nervous? People watching you?" And I always tell them, like, if I'm up here singing and playing my guitar, it's a whole other situation. I'm like, I am not comfortable doing that. But if I'm up here blowing glass, it's a different thing. 'Cause I've done it for 21 years. But I also wanted to make sure, like, when people are coming in to watch me, and a lot of times they stand there for 10, 15 minutes. Some people stand there for too long, I feel, because they're going to scorch their retinas, watch me working. But I had to figure out something within my work that was exciting, except for just like this hot. I mean, glass is exciting in general, but something. So my brother-in-law, who I lived with before he was my brother-in-law, is a drummer, and he had a lot of flair when he drummed. So when I'm doing my sculptural work, when I'm switching positions or hands or whatever, I'm not throwing my sticks up in the air, but I do a lot of hand rotations and flipping the glass around to change positions, just for that extra movement that's in there. For that flair in a sense that I want to have. Because you can sit and watch, we always joke about glass blowing is boring and it's like NASCAR, until there's a crash, and I don't want that. I want the part of what I'm doing to be fun. That the end result's great, sure, but I definitely like the performance aspect of it. Like there was a time where I was talking to my manager, I wanted to take on this persona of being like the bumbling glass blower. And I'd get like to the very end of my project and be like, "Oh my god!" and like throw it in the air somehow, and it'd hit my bench and smash into 1,000 pieces, and freak everybody.
Oh, I love it.
And freak everybody out. But I would get nothing made because I would always be breaking my shit at the end of the day, and whatever.
Yeah, but the reaction of the audience is probably so fun to watch.
Oh man!
Like, oh no!
Well, with that flare thing, there's been times where my punny rod was too long, and I've caught the corner of my bench and knocked off whatever I'm making. Like I make these big characters, and I usually have if I'm working on their upper part of their torso, my punny rod's attached to the bottom of their foot. So it's a hot seal too, so it shouldn't come off. But if I'm flipping it around and I've got 3 pounds of glass and this pendulum swinging, and it hits my bench and crashes. Like I've had people scream in my store just because of this loud, crazy, noise that I'm making. And I sit there and laugh because it just makes me.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you're just laughing the whole time. Yeah. You're like, just adding a little drama.
Yeah, exactly. And I just pick it up and keep working. Like nothing happened.
Yeah. I mean, like flameworking, it's so performative, right? Like it has the potential to really like, it's fascinating and mesmerizing, and like you said, like it can be boring. So like when doing demonstrations, like I'm sort of like, asking the same thing, like how can we hold people's attention? And nowadays, like attention from viewers, like it's at a premium, right? Because I feel like people's attention spans are shorter than ever.
Yeah.
So that's why like with demonstrating, I'm like, okay, like just what can we do like to hold their attention? Or even with my artwork, like I just want to like get the quickest punch before like people look away or look to the next thing.
Yeah, what always gets me too is when I have photographers that come in, because like Disney is like a beautiful place to photograph, right? And I get these photographers that come in the store and they're taking pictures of the glass on the shelf and stuff, but they don't come up to me and take pictures. And I'm like, people do take pictures, but like someone that's got a really nice camera that's in my shop and they're not photographing this incredible flame that's going everywhere, and I'm like, what are you guys thinking?
What are they thinking? Yeah, I'm like at the right moment where like it just lights up the whole room. Like,
yeah.
Oh, it's just, I love it. I never get tired of it.
Yeah, same here. I think it's just like the amateur photographers, because there was a day where I was working at Magic Kingdom and it was pouring down rain, and all of a sudden like 6 photographers walked in and they were all over at the ESPN Sports Grounds, which is down the street from us, and their event got rained out, so they're looking for places to go take pictures, so they came to Magic Kingdom. And it started raining at the park, so they came into our store, and I got like 6 guys that were professional photographers, and I hear all this paparazzi snapshots going off. It was kind of intimidating at first, and then I just kind of okay, I just got to tune them out like I tune everybody else out, and just get
Right.
in my groove. But I was able to give these guys my email address, and they were able to send me some photos that they took, and there were some remarkable photos, not just of me, but just of like the flame and the glass, and just the magic of what's going on. It's pretty remarkable to see it.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the flame can create such a gorgeous atmosphere, and for me, like I love like turning all the lights off in the studio, so it's just like just lit with the flame, so it's like a single candle is lighting the room, and it's like very like romantic and like it kind of has like a witchcraft feel to it. So I like to do demos like that. Like, what's the weirdest we can get here? Glowing glass in the dark, like it's just the most delicious thing ever to look at. Like I never get sick of it. It just, I love it, and the fact that it just like can light up the room just with the molten glass. It's really fun.
Yeah, what gets me too is like you don't really realize how bright hot glass is until you do turn the lights off and then take off your glasses.
Right. Yeah, and if you've ever like demoed like outside, like in the sun.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's so different. You can't see anything. You can't even see the flame, let alone like how hot the glass is.
Yeah, it's like I consider it blowing glass blind.
Yeah.
So, have you gotten to a point to where you're gonna like make these things super complicated, or are you trying to keep them like what I mean? Like I guess in the sense of like making like removable mouthpieces, because like I've always loved the design of the brass instruments and just the way that they bend the metal and all the different things that go along with it, the keys and the components and the valves and all that kind of jazz. Do you think you'd ever want to try to push it that far with it, or are you really trying to keep it kind of philosophical and spiritual in a sense, if that makes any sense, and simplified?
Yeah, I think keeping it like more conceptual, philosophical, spiritual is more like the way I'm leaning, but I really do want to get more complicated with them. So I'm never going to try to make like a real like functioning like French horn out of glass with all the valves and stuff, because I don't need them. I can hit all the overtones that I want without needing valves, but I do want to like create an instrument that fills an entire room where like 10 people have to be blowing into it at once, and try to think of ways to bring even larger groups of people together in this weird situation. And of course, this has to happen post-COVID. Like these instruments have been played for a while, but yeah, I want to get more complicated with them and just more ridiculous. So, like the other trumpet that I made that is actually, I think my favorite, is the 2-person trumpet, and it wraps around 2 people's necks so that they have to stand shoulder to shoulder, and it's just 2 people playing, but it's a lot more combative because like their breaths are going in the tube and they're hitting. Once one person hits a note, the other person will knock them off the note and sort of take over. So blending these aspects of competition and collaboration. So I want to do more and just think of more ways to put people's bodies in strange positions, and more ways to like create strange objects, while also like drawing on like the intricate ornamentation. I made a trumpet. It was the last piece I made before the lockdown, and it was a trumpet that's designed to make the player go deaf. So there's a mouthpiece and a bell at the top, and then there's a second bell that is designed to go right up against the player's ear. So so when you blow into it, it's really fucking loud.
I was going to ask you to explain yourself, but I wanted to let you do it, so that explains it. That is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's it's obviously like a metaphorical instrument. Like I would never play it, and actually that's a lie. I did play it once because I was really anxious to try and see if it worked. So I finished it, let it cool down. I played one note, and then oh my god, I regret it. My right ear did not stop ringing for like 2 weeks.
Oh my god.
And it's just so stupid that I did that, but like I love that. Like it's like the least necessary thing ever. But yeah.
Oh, I love
so
it.
I wanted it to be like, and it was a hard piece to make because there's a lot of coils and curling around, and it was like a real pain in the ass to assemble. So like this, I just love the fact that like it's a really intricate piece, and like but playing it would be detrimental to your physical well-being.
Yeah.
So that's the rub there.
That's amazing. It's like a screen in a door to a submarine or something kind of thing, you know? It's just,
Yeah.
so what I'm really curious about is you going from concept to final piece. Like I know how I go through things, but with what you're making, for one, you have all these crazy twists and turns, and then you have this flared bell that has to have sound come out of it that sounds somewhat like a specific instrument, or just unless you're just wanting to make noise, which I can appreciate that too. So when you're doing this kind of stuff, you know, like you're saying, you know, you have one that has it, so it wraps around your neck with two people, you know, each person's neck kind of thing. Are you creating a jig for this kind of situation? You know, like what's your process from start to finish?
Yeah. I'll start with like a sketch, and I'm not a two-dimensional artist. Like I hate drawing, but I'll do like a really quick like line drawing sketch to try to understand it. Sometimes I'll use SketchUp, the rendering program, although like that's kind of a struggle for me sometimes, but it's really helpful for like realizing a piece that's like really out there. But anyway, yeah, like for that one, I'll do a sketch. I'll draw it onto a kiln shelf. This one was convenient in the fact that it was sort of flat, like the curling part around the neck, like it was on one plane. So I just got a giant kiln shelf, sketched it out. And actually what also really helps is for something that interacts with the body, I will use like armature wire and create a rough mock-up of the shape. That way I can feel how the wire itself just like rests on my neck, how much space like it would give me another person to sit between. So that's sort of like my process there of like ideating.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering how you did that.
There are certain things that like you just won't know how it is until it's like a real object though. Like you don't really know what it's like to blow into a tube that someone else is blowing into until you're actually there doing it. So
yeah.
There's like some discovery along the way for sure.
Yeah, it's so neat though, and obviously with your background and teaching yourself how to play trumpet, you know how to shape your lips a certain way to get your pitches and your tones and what have you. Like you're saying, you don't need valves on there to change that necessarily.
Yeah, it's like a Baroque style trumpet, so it's an older form of trumpet. They're actually called natural trumpets, and old-fashioned like earlier trumpets, they have no valves. They were just like one tube. So they were a lot harder to play. You had to create every different note with your mouth. So that's kind of my inspiration for that. I'm like definitely not a virtuoso, but it's not really the point for me right now. Isn't making like good sounding music. It's sort of questioning like what is sound, what is music, what is the line between like performing art and performance art. So they're kind of two different things in my view.
Yeah, and it's fun because you're doing both. Like you're performing the art beforehand, and then you're doing the performance art after the fact.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's fun, and because like I years and years and years ago, there's a local community radio station I used to listen to, and every Wednesday night they would do this experimental hour, and they would talk about the artist or the composer or whatever, and some of these guys would literally just make a bunch of just homemade objects that were turned into instruments, and they'd put them on the floor and just randomly point to people, and the composer knew what in a sense what they were doing, but the final result wasn't going to be known until it was done, you know, and they would just point to certain people to play their instrument and point to them to put it down, you know, kind of thing. And then you hear the final process and what the piece sounds like, and it's just like this weird psychedelic mumbly jumbly thing, but it's beautiful at the same time. Like it's not for everybody, you know, even for me sometimes. But I have a true appreciation for it because I understand, you know, the mindset and the art and the thought that would go into it. And it just, at that point in time when I was listening to this kind of music, I was also starting to blow glass. So that's when I was also in my head thinking about like various types of glass instruments that could be made. I never went I'm still just below air in my tube like a didgeridoo. Never went anywhere with it. So it's fun to see you as an artist, someone that's taken this kind of experimental concept, but also has this, you know, philosophical, spiritual thing involved with all of it. It's so neat. So I'm so glad I found your page and got to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is so great. I love this conversation. It's really fun.
Yeah, hopefully it inspires other people to do it because I know like E-Tide, who's a pipe maker, he's done some incredible instruments and that are pipes, you know, and I know people have actually bought his art not realizing that it's a pipe. They bought it because they thought it was a glass trumpet, you know. And then all of a sudden he said, yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, his pieces are beautiful and they're like colorful, like fully worked. Yeah, it's funny, like, and a lot of times people will see my trumpets and be like, oh, well, where do you put the lead? And I mean, they
Yeah,
definitely
sure.
could be could be functional, but yeah, that's another concept there, multi-person bong. It's not really like my thing. Like, I never really make pipes like professionally. It's not been my focus because like there's just been so many people who do amazing, who are already amazing pipe makers. And so I was like, oh, it's not really where I feel like I need to fit in there. Like it's hard like that. And there's just so many like awesome pipe makers out there. So I want to see like what are the weirder, less practical things that can be done with flameworking. Just to kind of question like what else, like, what can I discover here? Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely found it. It's pretty wild. I'm definitely excited to see the future of what you bring to this. I would love to see a full band playing these instruments. Or even a full band playing one instrument together, like you're saying.
Right? Yeah. It's like the opposite of a one person band. It's like 10 people playing one instrument. It's like such a waste of people, but it's like it's it's the act, it's the show. It's really just like for humor.
Yeah, totally. Because you could tap on it. I mean, there's all kind of different ways that you could incorporate music into this instrument besides just blowing air through it, while you're still blowing air through it.
Right. Yeah. And like vibration is so fun. Like the whole tube vibrates when you buzz into it. And if you're not blowing, if your mouth is just on a mouthpiece, it tickles your mouth in a
Oh,
really
totally.
interesting way. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that sensation. Yeah, it makes your whole head almost vibrate from it.
Yeah. It's so funny for me. Like I think of it as like being like kissing someone, but like through a tube, like, so there's this like glass tube in the middle and it's like weirdly like you're making contact through the mouth. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah. Have you thought about incorporating water? I mean, not as a bong, obviously, but like just to kind of change some of the sounds that you would get out of it?
Yeah, like, I mean, I think that if you were to submerge part of the instrument in water, that would actually change change the tone it can make.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some instruments I make that do incorporate water, like, have you ever seen like water hammers being played?
I don't know. I if I heard it, I probably would. I have to look it up though for sure.
It's not really like a musical instrument. It can be, but they're basically just glass tubes with a bulb on the end, and there's water sealed inside, and it's sealed under a vacuum. So like the tube is evacuated and then tapped off or tipped off. So I made a couple of these last summer with Sally, and the water is sealed into the tube, so there's like very little air inside, right? So if you kind of just like tap the tube, like shake it, it will make a noise that sounds like a metallic ping, like almost like a hammer hitting a nail. So, and that's just the sound of water hitting the glass without any air cushion. So that's really, really fun. Like it's also like a physics lesson in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another part of this. All this is all the science behind what you're doing. Because I've been to all kind of tubing before, but nothing at all like what you're doing. It's a whole other element.
Yeah, it's a good way for me to learn about science. Like it's like learning through doing kind of thing. And like you said, like your friend who's making the flute, like kind of like trial and error. If the holes aren't lined up in the right way, like it won't make as good of a sound. So copying an actual flute and then realizing like, oh, this is why it works that way. Or like when I made like my first set of pan pipes, I realized like to tune them, I tuned them by ear just as I was like making them in the flame. So I'd blow into it, and if I wanted the pitch to be lower, I'd puff out the tube to make it a little longer. That way the note would get slightly lower. If I wanted to be higher, I would heat it and just condense it a little bit to make the tube shorter, and then the pitch would be a little sharper. So it's just so fun to like discover. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because when I was first making pipes, for me to find like the right ratio for the size of the bowl hole to the size of the opening of the carb, when I blew air through it, I wanted it to whistle. It had to have a certain pitch to it, and that's when I knew like I was on point with because my bowl hole inside there obviously is going to be smaller than the hole on the carb. But if your hole in your carb's too big, you can burn your finger or your thumb, and if your bowl hole's too big, you're going to have ash and all kind of shit go in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was blowing through my pipe one day at the house, and my wife's like, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like, "Oh, that's my pipe." And that's how I know, like when it's making that whistle, and it's a certain pitch that it makes too that I've like learned. It's funny.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's like that all goes back to like the multi-sensory aspect of blowing glass. Like what other senses can you use to know like it's going your way? Like that whistle noise is so neat.
Yeah, and I can't ever really tell them until it's cold and the glass is hardened, But
Okay.
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and I have also heated up blowpipes and gone to blow air through them, and they were still hot, like a fresh polish. So, don't recommend that.
Yeah, no, you don't want to burn your mouth. You've done that enough times.
Yeah, but it's amazing how fast it heals. Like I had a perfect ring
Yeah.
in the inside of my lips, and the next day it was gone. I was like, this is amazing.
Right? It's like the mouth like heals so quickly. Thank God. Otherwise, it would really suck. Like the worst is when you cut your mouth and you burn it at the same time with like a sharp, hot blow tube somehow. I'm like, how did I do that one?
Yeah, I've done wrap and rakes where like the wrapped glass popped off and stuck to my lips and around my face area. Looked like I had like herpes or some syphilis or something going on,
Well, that's just bad luck.
Yeah,
Right
it's time to go home.
Yeah. Seriously.
Well, on that note, unless there's anything else you want to share, I think it'd be a good chance for us to take a quick break and thank some sponsors, and then we'll come back and it'll be time for us to crash the kiln.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. This segment of the Glassblowers Companion is supported by listeners like you. Become a member of our community by joining our Patreon and gain access to our members, monthly tutorial series, early access to content, and one-on-one mentorships with me. Our troll-free zone is a safe place to share your glass questions and help each other grow as artists. Gain access to monthly glass challenges and sell your work through our new Etsy page coming soon. You can support the show for as little as $12 a year, and every bit of your contribution goes directly to helping pay the bills and keep this show on the air. For more questions or to join our Patreon, just go to patreon.com/wiseguyradio. That's patreon.com/wiseguyradio. Check for the link in the show notes. Now, on with the show. All right, we are back. So the Crash and the Kiln round consists of 7 questions, I believe. I would say 6 or 7 because I still have not counted these questions. I need to after 5 years. I guess I should know. But anyways, you can give me a 30 to 60-second answer on them. We can also expound upon them as we always do here. And my first question I always like to ask is if there's any living glass artist that you haven't worked with or collabed with yet that you would like to. Who is it and why?
Oh, man, that's such a big question. I feel like there are a lot of people I'd like to collab with. Probably some more of like the conceptual side. So there's a glass artist named Helen Lee, and she also has synesthesia, and her work is a lot more conceptual. She does work in the hot shop and performance. She teaches at University of Madison, Wisconsin. I'd love to collaborate with her. Also, like so many other people, like do some more musical instruments with Sally Prash, and yeah, I'll stop myself there, but yeah, a lot of goodness.
Heck yeah! What are your? I know you work in clear a lot, but what are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
I love, I'll just go back to basics. I love Blue Moon, such a great color. Double amber purple. Again, like I haven't used color in a ton of work for a few years, so there's all these new colors that are coming out, and like I have to keep up with it. But yeah,
I'm so behind.
Purple. Yeah, like every day there's a new color.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love those ones.
So you got Blue Moon, Amber Purple. That's 2.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's still a thing anymore, but did you know Spring Luster? I think it's Glass Alchemy. Like a really
sounds
sweet,
familiar.
Like, green, yeah.
Was like a sparkly green.
Yeah, kind of like reduces a little bit, but turns a little purple. That's really beautiful. I don't know. There's just so many gorgeous colors.
Yeah, I'm still stuck in like 1999 myself. I'm like ruby, butterscotch, amber purple, right. Blue Moon, like you're saying.
You can't go wrong with the classics.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. Let's see here. If you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, what would it be?
Arthritis.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know why I went. Like kind of like a bad thing, but it's like gonna happen someday.
Yeah, that's hilarious. What's your worst injury in the studio?
I think probably. Oh, you know what sucks is when like you're using a 4 millimeter rod and you're doing something like wrap and rake or something, and it like just breaks in half on you and it stabs you, goes all the way into your hand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like the flimsy skinny rod breaking going into me. That's a good one right there. Classic memory.
Yeah, definitely. But nothing like having to go to the hospital or major burns or nothing like that.
I mean, I just feel like I'm done working for today.
Yeah.
No major burns. I stuck my finger in my my hand torch one time, my little Smith mini torch. That's the worst. Like, I got a giant blister. I've never stuck my finger in like my bench burner. Thank God.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
No, it doesn't sound
fun. I've done it twice. It sucks.
The worst is like when that kind of thing happens during a demo and you have to play it cool.
I have burnt the shit out of myself several times. The worst so far is making this gecko, and it was a pretty good size. It was probably about, the body itself was about 8 inches long, and I was just in my groove doing my thing, and I went to go heat up a punty to attach the punty to the face of the gecko and remove it off the tail so I can then curl the tail around. And I didn't realize, just because I was in my groove, that the head was cold. So when I went to go heat that up, somehow it cracked, and the whole vibration took it off the punty that I had it on at the tail. So the back 2/3 of this thing is like raging hot, and the front half was cold. So when it snapped off, it like draped around my left arm, and I just quickly just like shook it off. And I have tattoos, so I have to wear long sleeve shirts, but I roll them up to my elbows. So I shake it off the bench, and I just grab it with my tweezers, and then punny back up to it and pick up the pieces that I broke and stick it in the kiln. And I was doing something, but I look up at the guests, and half the guests walked out because they saw what happened.
What, they didn't want to stick around and watch?
Yeah, totally. But I look up at the rest of them, I'm like, oh my God, what does that smell? And they all looked at me, and the rest of them all left. So, that was my way of...
stuff happens. Yeah, the drama.
God. And it looked terrible because like all the hair had like burnt into my skin, kind of thing. It was brutal.
And the smell of sizzling flesh fills the room.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, it's okay, everyone. Like, this happens all the time. Like, not really, but it's totally fine. You'll be okay. Yeah,
usually I just like ignore it and I just keep doing my thing and then move on, Or if I cut myself, I can feel like the rod getting sticky in my hand and I'm trying to hide that I'm bleeding, kind of thing.
You're right, yeah, like trying to hide it. Like, once I got really burnt when I was doing a demo for class, and like the rod was just too far up into the kiln, and it wasn't communicated like how hot it was, and I grabbed it. I was like, holy fuck. And it's like, it's okay, like, play it cool. And then I go to the other room and scream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't want to scare anybody. It's like, they're just babies. I don't want to scare them.
Oh, you got to show them what the reality of this shit they're getting themselves into is all about.
Yeah, it's actually true.
It's like driver's ed class, you just gotta show them the reality.
Right, yeah.
You will crash and burn, I promise.
Eventually, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. When you're in the studio, do you listen to music, watch TV, or do you do both?
I like music. I actually usually listen to podcasts. That's why I'm so happy to discover this. So I got a new podcast to listen to.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I like NPR and just sort of like listening to interviews, and because I work alone in the studio a lot. I've always had like a solo studio, so I just like to listen to other people's voices and pretend that I'm not alone. Like other people are there.
Yeah, and that was another catalyst for me starting the show, was like just to keep people company in their studios, because like a lot of us work solo.
Right. Yeah. It's nice to just have like, even listening to a conversation, it kind of feels like you're in on it and like you're learning about people. It's like a nice way to pass the time. Yeah,
I love it. I love listening to podcasts like that. Do you have any glass blowing themed tattoos?
I have no tattoos. If I were to get one, it might be glass themed. I haven't decided. I'll probably get like a bunch of tattoos when I'm like 50 or 60. Now I can make up my mind. I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah, there you go. Do one of your crazy trumpets or something.
Right, yeah.
Hell yeah. So last but not least, not including your torch or your glasses or your kiln, what are your top 5 favorite tools?
I love my Griffin grabbers. I have a bunch of different sizes. Those are great. I just love griffin tools, different sculpting tools. I have the fillet knife. I don't like even use it that often, but it's just my favorite thing to look at and hold. It's just so pretty. And their necking tool. I also have a really great pair of tweezers that actually my friend Josh Bull, my high school glassworking teacher, he makes tools too, and it's so great to have a nice pair of tweezers that are like really pointy and like meet really nicely at the tip. So they're probably my favorite.
Heck yeah! And you said you're rocking a GTT.
Yeah, I use a Phantom.
Okay.
And I use a Carlisle at the studio that I work at RIT right now. Well, you can't go wrong with the Carlisle either. It's great for getting that really big bushy annealing flame for bending tubing and stuff.
Yeah, that's my daily driver has been a Carlisle. So for yourself, how was it going from the Carlisle to the GTT? Like, was there a weird transition for you there? Like learning the torches?
I mean, the GTT just has such a more penetrating flame. Like, it's a lot juicier. It gets in the glass, I find, like, a lot quicker. So it's really great for color when I'm doing color work, like, all without the GTT, because it just, like, treats it so much better. But the main thing to get used to with the Carlisle is it can just be really loud. But I generally love the more sort of gentle, larger, softer flame that the Carlisle can get for what I'm doing right now with the like larger clear blown pieces.
Nice. Yeah. They definitely have their uses for sure. It took me about a year and a half to get used to the GCT. Just not getting devid on pieces because I make some pretty large sculptures, solid sculptures, and I was just burning the shit out of the glass.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like just so much hotter.
Yeah, it's that solid as soup kind of thing that I find like GTT does. It's just amazing how fast it just penetrates, like you're saying, and gets the molecule, heat base, everything going, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this stuff's moving
right.
already.
Right, yeah. So you have to like every time you switch over, you have to like kind of get used to the different kind of timing in there. And like it's the same when you go to someone else's studio and you use their torch. You're like, okay, like slightly different. Just have to like adjust my game a little bit, adjust my speed.
Did you ever have any days where you went directly from hot shop to torch?
Yeah, like I've done that a lot the past year. I'll go from the hot shop to the torch. In the hot shop, I'll do a method where I actually spin glass into like sculptures made of just glass strands. So it's a very meditative process, like gathering out of the furnace, spinning the glass at a rapid speed on a throwing wheel for ceramics. So like that's a great way to just like get into a Zen state of mind and sort of just like let the glass do the work. I'm just like the laborer, and then like I like going from there to the flame shop where like it's just so much more like hands-on, and there's so much more control. So it kind of like helps me appreciate both, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I've done that too. Gone back and forth between the two. It's a different like mechanics too for your body, but once you get both of those down, it's easy to transition. Again, why I recommend any flame worker to take hot shop classes, because it's there's so many hand skills you'll learn. It's incredible.
Yeah, and it teaches you things like marbling really well. So like marbling in the hot shop, like it's just so much more like involved and physical. And then if you can marble in the hot shop, you can marble in the flame shop. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well said. Well, awesome, Madeline. It's been great talking to you and listening to your story and talking glass. But before I let you go here, if there's any parting piece of advice you'd like to give the audience, as well as where we can find you out there in cyberspace.
I feel like just find what makes you happy, and even on your bad days, if you can go into the studio and make something to get your mind off of it, it's gonna help you get through a lot of things. A really great piece of advice too that I got from Roger Paramore is get paid to practice, especially when you're first starting out. So if you can like find a production item that you can make and like you can help hone your skills and eventually get to the point where you can sell it. Like for instance, for him, it was like Christmas ornaments. And you can like find a way to support yourself, grow your skills, grow yourself creatively, and also get a little income to sustain your creative practice. Like that's a really great strategy, I feel like, if you're starting out.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. That's why I feel blessed with the position I have with Arribas Brothers at Disney, because I'm getting paid every day to practice and hone my skills. It's very unique. For sure.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then like I guess every time you approach it, you can like concentrate on a new like skill that you're doing while you're working, or like just keep working even if it's the same thing, like how to make it better, or more efficiency is a big thing to build into it too, right?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, all the above. Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, hell yeah. And then also where we can find you in cyberspace. You had mentioned too, do you have an online shop that you sell your stuff?
Yeah, I'm selling on Etsy right now, so I have some wearables, some pendants up on there. And then, like you can find me on Instagram. My handle is madhotglass, one word. And yeah, that's a great way to reach me too, by message. And I actually just started a partnership with TikTok, so they hired me to like create educational videos about glass. So that just started a week ago. So if you're on TikTok and you want to like see some demos, it's tricky because they only have to be like 10 to 15 seconds long. So I'm figuring out the quickest glass demos I could ever make. I'm really trimming it down to the essence. But it's really fun. So you can just check me out on there as well.
So I hope you all enjoyed this episode and interview and chit chat with Madeline Smith here. You can definitely, again, I'll have all the links for her show, her contacts, Instagram, Etsy, all that stuff in the show notes. You had said you made some videos. Are they available on YouTube?
Yeah, some of them are on YouTube and some are also on Vimeo. So I've got a little bit of each on both. So I'll be sure to send you the links for both. Yeah,
please do. I'll make sure I have those out for you all to check out because definitely some inspiring stuff. I think what you're doing is super unique, and just like your whole mindset that you have, and also overcoming your own personal adversities. It's with physical issues that you've had at your young age. It's definitely quite remarkable.
Oh, thanks so much. I mean, I'm just so lucky to have glass. It's just like the best thing ever. So life is good right now. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and it's been so fun to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much too. And hope you all enjoyed this episode again, and we will talk to you next time on A Glass Blower's Companion. Love you so much. Be safe out there. Talk to you soon. Peace.